afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and welcome to my first attempt at reinstating talking about Myers-Briggs on my YouTube channel. I know a lot of you really missed that element of it, and that's why most of you are subscribed to this channel in the first place. So I thought, I guess it wouldn't hurt to at least give it a try, albeit a little bit more limited than I used to, because I've gotten some feedback that it was difficult to judge whether I was using personal experience versus actually citing sources that legitimately talk about Myers-Briggs. So I'll start with an introduction so that people watching this in the future can retroactively search for this video so that I don't have to explain this every single time I start. But I was told that some websites are more reliable than others when talking about the Myers-Briggs. So today alone, I went to the Myers-Briggs Foundation, which is the official Myers-Briggs website, and the careerproject.org. So these websites are probably the most accurate sources you'll find in describing the actual Myers-Briggs. They're a bit confusing to navigate, but they do talk about the function stacks of every type and how Carl Jung, when he initially proposed his Myers-Briggs theory, he actually saw the cognitive functions first. And then the Myers-Briggs people, they came along and they simplified that into the 4 letters. So if you're the type that says, Paul, what are you talking about? What the heck are cognitive functions? Are you just making them up? If anything, the letters are the afterthought, and the cognitive functions are what really explain Myers-Briggs. Second, I really like what the camera did to my shirt. This is actually purple, but it looks blue to all of you guys, and honestly, I kind of like it better like that. I wish I could just retroactively dye this blue. That would be so cool because I personally don't really like this purple color. Anyway, I thought that the first video to do on my new series would be interestingly poetic in terms of the fact that I have a YouTube channel, and obviously with a YouTube channel, that means that I'm going to be wanting people to view my content. So I thought, what better way to talk about getting people to view their content than talking about how ISTJs, which is my type, are really pathetic at advertising. At least I would assume so based on not only my personal experience, but from what I've studied about their cognitive function stack. So let's start by talking about what the ISTJ has. Their dominant function is called introverted sensing. This is a function that takes in information, usually facts and details in the sensory world, like a chair, a carpet. But it doesn't just stop there. It also contrasts with experiences and memories that are familiar to them. A lot of times for them, the joy of the familiar is going to be their greatest source of information and reliability. So already you can see that this is going to be difficult if you're going into the advertising world, because advertising often involves looking at more abstract patterns in order to sell a product. You can't just tell it like it is. You can't be 100% factual. You have to look into stuff that's not easily available. Like you have to think about stuff like group dynamics, which how do you measure a group dynamics? You can't touch it, you can't see it, you can't smell it. So how's the ISTJ supposed to know? But introverted sensing alone doesn't prove anything. The next function is extroverted thinking. Now, I think thinking functions, despite me being a thinking type myself, are the hardest for me to describe to people because both introverted and extroverted thinking is all about a logical, more emotionally detached version of processing information. It tries to look at more of an objective reality. However, extroverted thinking, at least based on the 2 sources I looked at today, if you need me to clarify even further, I'll try looking at other sources, but the source that I particularly looked at was extroverted thinking is a very step-by-step, concrete learning process. It thinks about things in this results-oriented, getting things done pragmatic way. Introverted thinking, in contrast, is a personal decision-making system where the person will often try to create their own logical framework for understanding things. And then if new information comes along, then that person will adjust their way of thinking to fit with that new information. It is extremely confusing, so confusing, in fact, that people with introverted thinking don't even know how to describe it. But that's probably irrelevant to this current video. I just thought I'd bring that up because it seems like there's been confusion lately. But for the sake of saving time in the future, I'll just read out what it says on Career Project, where it says, introverted thinking is about iterations, holistic reasoning, agile strategies. Introverted thinking takes a bottom-up approach to problem solving and fixates on information management. When new data comes in that contradicts old beliefs, introverted thinking will shift like a fluid crystalline framework. Whatever that means. That's a bit too abstract for me to understand. So, extroverted thinking, the results-driven step-by-step, pragmatic way of thinking, is, again, going to wonder, how the heck does this framework make any sense for advertising? It's going to think, this is a product, now let's look at the product and see what exactly is it. Is it a box of tissues that I'm trying to sell? Is it a YouTube video like this? Okay, what is the video? What is the objective truth here? And so by wanting that objectivity, they're going to have a hard time trying to create a falsehood. Whereas the other types might be a little bit more willing to spin the truth for the sake of making a profit, the extroverted thinking and the introverted sensing are going to work together to say, not only does this not match up with my memory, but it also doesn't match up with objective reality. But then we get to the third function, which is introverted feeling. Introverted feeling in its primary state is a value-driven system where instead of thinking about things from an internal logical framework, it thinks about things from an internal emotional framework where it looks at, okay, what feels right to me? What are my values? What do I personally believe in? To the introverted thinkers, it can come across as, ew, such touchy-feely stuff. That's not to say that introverted feelers can't ever think about others as emotions, but they're going to prioritize what they believe over trying to please the crowd or trying to manage everyone else's emotions and needs. So when it comes to advertising a product, that is going to lead for them to question their own belief systems as far as, do I believe that it's ethical to try to force myself to make this product better than it is? Now, because it's in the third function, the tertiary function, as it's officially called, is sort of the one that needs development. Like, obviously, because it's not in the top two, it's not this snap judgment, immediate access. Oftentimes, ISTJs have to become aware that it exists and make a concrete effort to really push it to the forefront. So, ISTJs that have developed their introverted thinking might start feeling a little bit uncomfortable and say, wait a minute, why am I saying that Raid Shadow Legends has sponsored this video? Is Raid Shadow Legends even good? Not only that, but is it ethical to lie about the product? What if I don't like the product? What if getting a sponsorship is making my video more aggravating? Now, I could see the reverse being true in me in particular. I personally wouldn't want a sponsorship in my videos because I feel like, one, that's taking away from the video, and two, I just don't like seeing that in other people's videos. So following along with the subjective inner value of do to others what you would have them do to you, it comes across as extremely fake and hypocritical. If I were to have a sponsorship, I would definitely not want to end up being the very thing that I hate. And maybe, I don't know, you can tell me if you're an extroverted feeler and you're willing to put up with that kind of icky stuff, then kudos to you. I certainly don't have that bravery. So the final function of the ISTJ function stack is called extroverted intuition. Now, usually this function doesn't come out in the ISTJ unless if they're in considerable amounts of stress. So it leads to them usually envisioning all these terrible possibilities. And during their normal day-to-day life, extroverted intuition often leads to them having this oppressive, antagonistic view towards change and possibility and new ideas. In other words, it's this constant war between the top and the bottom function, whereas the dominant function is all about what is familiar to me, what have I experienced, and extroverted intuition is all about new possibilities. The ISTJ is going to say, shut up, you. I don't want to risk potentially harming myself with your delusional ideas about progress for the sake of progress. So how does that relate to advertising? Well, for starters, you're trying out new tactics that are unfamiliar in getting you to get a project. In the ISTJ's past, let's say that the ISTJ is used to a certain way of trying to get people to look at what they have worked on. Now, take me, for example. Usually when I have tried way before I had a YouTube channel to get people to look at maybe the books that I wrote, or maybe I wrote an essay, or I used to write instruction manuals for my games, and I would just use word of mouth. I'd say, hey, would you like to check this out? And all these years later, that's still what I do. And maybe I'm being petty and stupid, and maybe I should embrace more ideas about making my videos popular. But usually for me personally, I find that that just makes me feel gross. Like, a lot of the tactics are, they come across to me personally as being very not true to who I am, so it comes across like I would be putting on a YouTube persona to be overly excited about something when I might not even be that proud of my project. Like, I think I'm proud of most of my videos on a base level. But that doesn't mean that I'm automatically going to say, because I made it, it is therefore the pinnacle of quality. Like, I'm capable of looking at other people's work and trying to see it in a more distanced viewpoint to say, okay, let's look at the pros and cons of both of them as objectively as possible without taking into account my personal feelings and saying, yeah, that's objectively a better product. The reason why I don't think ISTJs, and me in particular, like advertising very much is, again, to reiterate, it's not familiar. It doesn't make sense logistically because you're objectively trying to look at the product and not trying to make it out into something that it isn't. Our personal values don't want us to have to deal with this new, icky strategy. And at the bottom, we just don't like new things. We're just so used to not having to put on a front that we just don't feel like trying anything new. And if you subscribe to the theory about the seventh function being a blind spot function, which admittedly I haven't looked into to find definitive proof that this is true, but from what one of my trusted friends who has researched Myers-Briggs has told me, every person's seventh function, which is the third function but with the extroversion introversion swapped, has what's called a blind spot to that function, which means they don't hate it, they don't try to repress it, but they just don't really recognize it in use. So for the ISTJ, that function is called extroverted feeling, which is all about harmony and looking at how do other people feel? How do I create a situation where everyone is as happy as possible? I think ISTJs want everyone to be happy. They just don't naturally grasp the how to make everyone happy part. So they might employ what would make me happy, that will therefore make everyone happy, and come to the total wrong conclusion because their internal values doesn't match up with the other person's, and they can't obviously see that. Their extroverted thinking is making them say, no, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. I don't literally see this person's heartbeat. I don't literally see the neural pathways in their brain suddenly lighting up and providing them dopamine. How am I supposed to be able to tell the difference? So with extroverted feeling being the blind spot, they might also hurt people's feelings without meaning to. And if there's one thing advertisers cannot do, it's bad public relations. So I feel like ISTJs would be the worst types at public relations because they do not get how to please an audience. They do not get what should I say to please everyone in such a way that it'll promote more sales. Now, in the case of my particular YouTube videos, I don't charge money for any of my videos, and if there are ever ads on my videos, I am deeply sorry. I really hope you can get an ad blocker because that is completely outside of my control. But I feel like when you're advertising something free, that is probably just either negligence or lack of interest on the other person's part. I might be getting into slight personal opinions here, but I feel like if you tell someone, hey, this is free, so you literally have nothing to lose, then in my mind, there's only two possibilities to how that could turn out. The first possibility is I'm simply not interested. Okay, that's valid. I have plenty of things I'm not interested in. The second is that that person is just not very good at managing their time to be able to try out the free product. So if, hypothetically, I'm going up to someone who loves Myers-Briggs, and not one of you guys. If you're thinking that I'm referring to one of you, I'm not. I'm just being hypothetical here. I go up to someone and I say, hey, I make a lot of Myers-Briggs content on my YouTube channel. Oh my gosh, Paul, that sounds great. I'll check it out. And then they don't. Knowing me and the type of people that I hang around, it seems more likely that that person is just not very good at saying, okay, I am going to set aside some time to sit down and watch this video that is something that is based on my personal likes. And that's another thing, that's another reason why ISTJs are so pathetic at advertising, is because so often people say they'll do something and then they don't, or the view count on YouTube is saying that we only get 8 views. So looking at the statistics and looking at the patterns of the past, they say, why should I even bother in the first place? And then they just hope that YouTube will just do the work for them. I feel like if I say any more, this will get too into an abstract, philosophical discussion about the ways in which products should be advertised, and I'm literally getting a headache just thinking about it. So I think I'll stop the video here and just hope that I gave you guys some more information about how the ISTJ mind works when it comes to trying to make sure that something that they work on is seen and admired by the fans, and why we're our own worst critics. And again, hopefully you can look up the 2 sites that I cited for myself, because I found it really confusing to navigate the Myers-Briggs website itself, so maybe you can find more information than I could. So with that, thank you very much for watching. Let me know down in the comments section how different you are at advertising a product, and maybe advice that I can use to advertise mine without compromising my values and without having to look like a total phony on YouTube by going, yay guys, I have the best reviews ever! So until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless.